Hey, hello, and welcome to the Speakeasy. I'm your barkeeper, Jeff Belanger, and happy Memorial Day to you. This is a holiday with roots that go all the way back to just after the Civil War, when communities would honor the dead soldiers on a day they called Decoration Day. They'd put flowers and things like that around the graves. And pretty soon that kind of gelled and gained some national momentum. And in 1971, it became a federal holiday, the last Monday of May. And here we are. Now, Memorial Day for me usually means like outdoor barbecues, maybe some parties, maybe some friends over, some drinks. It's the unofficial start to summer, which means I get to bust out the white tuxedo all the way until Labor Day. But all that's kind of out the window this year, isn't it? Bummer. So I'm glad we have each other. I'm glad we're here. I'm glad we're doing this. And I'm also glad tonight's guest is here because we haven't talked about Bigfoot and lake monsters and other cryptids nearly enough. And this guy, frankly, is the very last word on the subject. So I'm glad he's here. He's the author of more than 40 books, and you've seen him on too many television shows to even list regarding the strange, the unusual, and cryptids and things like that. He runs the International Cryptozoology Museum in Portland, Maine. Please welcome Loren Coleman. Whoa, there's half of them. Yay! You made it. Thanks for being here.
Sure. It's great to be here.
It's great to be anywhere. Right. It's great to be home and pretend here.
Right.
What are you drinking?
A little iced tea.
We're having tea. Mine's hot. Yours is cold.
Right.
Together, we're lukewarm.
And Memorial Day actually started in the place where I went to undergraduate college, Carbondale, Illinois.
So, okay, hold on a second, because I know like 4 different communities lay claim to the birthplace of Memorial Day.
Right, but I'm most proud of Carbondale, Illinois, of course.
What's their story? I know Charleston, South Carolina, by a group of freed slaves, right? Like immediately after the war, they were claimed to be the first. Waterloo, New York is the one the federal government recognizes. I can't tell you why exactly. I just know that it's so. What's Illinois?
Well, in Carbondale, Illinois, there was a cemetery, and they started reading the names of all the dead.
Oh.
They said they were the earliest ones in the country to really have a Memorial Day or a Decoration Day.
I see. All right.
I mean, I was there, and I went to school there, and I actually, one Memorial Day, stood up and started reading. We read the names of all the dead that had died in Vietnam. So,
oh, my goodness.
Because I'm that old, Vietnam.
Well, yeah. No, I get that. And you got to be careful because this coronavirus thing, exactly. They call it boomer remover, right? Isn't that the...
Well, only people your age call it that. We don't.
Oh, right. Sorry. Too close to home. Oh, God. Yeah. So are you
actually getting rid of a lot of, moving a lot of people along, sadly.
So the International Cryptozoology Museum, this seems like a great time to be running a museum. I mean...
No.
No.
When we had to close on March 19th, this was really the beginning of our best season. It gets warm up here in Maine. People like to come out. They like to go to the museum. And there's our Bigfoot, which we call the Crookston Bigfoot, because it came from Crookston, Minnesota. And there's our logo on the front of our museum. That's a coelacanth, of course, which was discovered in 1938 after supposedly being extinct for 65 million years. So, it's a great place. We just were announced on a top 15 weirdest museums in the world, and then we closed. So it was like bad timing for publicity.
I know, but like, I mean, it's people still want to go. In fact, I mean, do you think if anything, maybe it's whetting the appetite, right? Absence makes the heart grow fond and all that. Do you think people are ready to race to you when they can?
Yes, we actually have a crypto store, which we have had online, and we've slowly made it into a curbside business.
Okay.
So this week, all of our staff were on duty for a regular 6-hour day, and we've had some tourists show up who said they were from Texas and that they called ahead. Problem is we have no phone, and as soon as we asked for their ID, they wouldn't show it to us, and we had to tell them we really weren't open for tours anyway. And so those kinds of things have happened really weirdly.
When are you going to be allowed to open? Any word yet or no?
We're not sure if it's going to be June 1st or July 1st. The governor of Maine has to make up her mind, and it seems to be 10 people some places. If it's outside of Cumberland County, which is where Portland is, the rural areas are opening, but we're not allowed to yet. So we're waiting with bated breath.
I know. And okay, so a lot of people, if they know you, they know that you are a baseball. Look at you. That's you, right?
That's me.
Underneath that Red Sox hat. So do you think you're going to see baseball this year?
Well, I do think we will. I think something will start July 4th weekend. My son is actually a producer at CBS Sports Network, and so I get a lot of inside information. And
do you think it'd be like an empty stadium?
Yes, definitely empty stadiums.
That's gonna be so weird. It's gonna be like, although you know what? Wait a minute. So years ago, I was in Tampa, and this was a year that the Devil Rays were not good. And like so bad, in fact, that I was there in town for work, and someone's like, "Hey, let's all go to the baseball game." And he was being a big shot and paying for all of our tickets. And he said, "Look, I want good seats." And she goes, "Honey, just pay for the bleachers. You can sit wherever you want." Right. And I mean, we were 10 rows from the dugout. And I mean, if there was 1,000 people in that whole stadium, like, I mean, we were way more than 6 feet apart. You know, I mean, nobody was there. Yeah. And it was quiet. I mean, big plays happened, and there was, no roar of the crowd. Yeah. And it's going to be like that. What I want to know is, what are you going to do when you're in the kitchen fixing yourself a snack? Like, we count on the roar of the crowd to run back in and check the TV, right?
Yeah, I think they'll do something like that.
You think they'll pipe it in?
I think they might have some of those canned audience sounds, or, music, different things like that. I mean, in Maine right now, they're debating whether or not to have Little League. So
yeah,
the whole thing could shut down. It's sad.
I know we've never seen anything like this in my lifetime and your lifetime, but that doesn't mean it hasn't happened historically. And that's what's interesting to me, right? Like I've been talking a lot about vampires in some of my programs lately, because consumption led to fear of vampires, led to, resurrecting all kinds of folklore from long ago. Are you seeing anything like that, especially from, your point of view and your research?
I'm not so sure about the vampires part.
No. Right. That was consumption. But I mean, like, people start dredging up like, oh my God, there's monsters, right? Monsters we can't see.
No, I think that it takes two to tango, and most people really are spending more time at home. So they're not out there to see the monsters. I mean, I've even been hopeful of, more hiking and more kind of outdoors activity. Have been bringing up more reports, but that's not true. It's really not true. People have done the old joke about, social distancing champion. Bigfoot.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
They completely leave out the fact that lots of reports are of Bigfoot together. So, but people really are not seeing more things. They're making more things up.
So that was one of my questions, right? So I wonder, humans have been kind of locked away for almost 3 months now. I just picture like Sasquatch frolicking in slow motion, like, movie, like, this is great. We have the beach to ourselves. We have the woods to ourselves. This is all we've ever wanted. No humans anywhere. But we wouldn't know because there's no humans to spot them.
Exactly.
So maybe they're having the time of their lives.
Probably so. Well, certainly we've seen news reports of different kinds of animals coming into urban areas, but most of those animals are ones that are already used to humans, like goats and,
Right. And some of those, I was reading, there's getting to be like rat problems. Rats who depended on the dumpster outside of a restaurant.
New York is having that problem.
Right. So suddenly you've got these animals that are like, hey, where's my free meal that I've been counting on my entire life?
Right. And the other thing is, like, in Maine, which is already pretty rural, Portland is the only city that's a real urban area. by government definition. And around the edges, we're starting to have bear reports come for the bird feeders and the suet and all of those things.
Sure.
So that is happening. And I think there'll be some encroachment of wildlife on humans, and we'll see where it leads.
Little Davy Schrader here has a question for you. He says, do you think with less people in the wild, more game cameras might catch the images? Like, are any reports coming in from those game cameras with?
Not too many. I worry about some of those game cameras being stolen by those people that are out there, because there are less people out there to watch them. And that's been a real problem with game cameras overall, is people put them out there. And that's why you see on a lot of these reality shows, they put them out there for 3 days, then they go check on them. And that is part of what happens. If you have a $80,000 camera out there, most of them don't cost that anymore. But the early ones were very expensive and getting stolen. But I'm not hearing any more than usual kind of things showing up on game cameras.
Yeah. So if people don't know a lot about you, they should. Obviously, they're tuned in. They probably know something. You've written so many books. Here's just a couple of them, whether it's like Mothman and Monsters, Cryptozoology, Mysterious America, which for any of us interested in weird animals, that was the Bible. I think that was, what, 1980, if I'm correct, right?
1983.
83. Okay, it's close. So,
but then in 2001, I actually redid the book by 50% of the volume. And I added, actually what happened in 2001, they took the chapter out on phantom panthers. And so I had it redone. Simon Schuster came along and wanted to redo it in 2006. Mm-hmm. And the phantom clowns went back in. And so that was very timely, because of course in 2016, phantom clowns was seen all over the country again.
Right. With it, right?
Well, it happened before it. It was much more in tune with Trump being a clown.
Okay. So it was related to the election as opposed to the movie?
Yeah, and then it came along later in that year, and then everybody said they got their chronologies mixed up, and they thought that the phantom clowns were reappearing because of it. But it wasn't even the trailers. It was really a lot of people in the media were calling Trump a clown before he was.
Gotcha.
Never mind.
Gotcha. No, I get it. Hey.
Here, I know.
No, fair enough. So a lifetime of looking into this, and let me actually, before I forget, the Mysterious America, was the first mention of a place called the Bridgewater Triangle, which has since become the subject of other books. I wrote about it in my Weird Massachusetts book. Right. It had its own documentary film, which really propelled it in more recent time. And I got to tell you, Loren, it's so funny. I get a call from a TV production company every few months for the last 2 years. I'd say every 2-3 months, someone calls and says, hey, we're going to do a show either just on the Bridgewater Triangle or on, other triangles. Like, what other triangles are there besides Bridgewater? Like, we want to do a whole series on different triangles or one triangle at a time. And what's the cyclical nature of these things? Why do they keep coming back?
I'm not sure. I don't know if one producer sees a documentary or reads the same book, because this year, probably, it must have been February, in 3 different weeks in 1 month, I got calls from 3 different documentaries or shows. I must have heard from the same people you did.
Probably, yeah.
Let me just say that I really first coined the word in 1976 when I was down in the Bridgewater area, and I was giving lectures. And then have you ever heard of Boston Magazine?
Oh, sure. Yeah, of course.
The Boston Magazine, I wrote an article in 1980, and it was entitled Bridgewater Triangle. And then I used that article to go in my book. So, even the documentary gets it wrong by saying it was in Mysterious America, which is fine because then the book sells. But it was really a much older word.
Yeah. And the interesting thing to me, of course, is what happens when, people like me, I live pretty close to the Bridgewater Triangle, and this thing comes out, they read your book or the movie, comes out, and suddenly people say, I never knew this, but that explains this weird stuff happening in my neighborhood. Or, now they're starting to draw connections,
Right.
and those connections are such a big part of folklore, as you said, becoming part of the story, right? Hey, I live here. Something weird happened on my street. I'm part of the Bridgewater Triangle. Now it's got a label, whereas before it was just my neighborhood.
Right. And I was just thinking today, looking at credibility of witnesses, I'm very dubious when someone immediately comes forth and they want to become part of the story. They then ask, "Are you going to be in am I going to be in your next book? Can I be on the next TV show that you're on?" And they be the witness. And those are the cases that I sort of say, "I'll listen to your case, but I'm not going to tell you whether or not what I think about it." Because
yeah, and it's funny too, because you don't even know at that point when someone comes to you with a story, like you listen, because I get it. That's the job we have, right? Like to find these stories and chronicle them if we can.
Right.
And sometimes you go, "Wow, you're really credible. I would actually like to quote you. I want to actually formally interview you." Other times you go, "Oh, that's interesting and a cool story. Thanks for sharing it, but I don't know what I can do with it, but good luck and everything in between."
There was a very important and several season TV show on Bigfoot, and I did not like how they would be talking to a witness and challenge the witness, like say, "Oh, you said Bigfoot had a black nose. They never have black nose. I've been investigating for 25 years. They've never had black noses. So you just don't do that. You just take the report in and you write it down, and then you decide later. You don't tell witnesses they're full of hooey right into their face."
Yeah, that's like, leading the witness, right? You're getting all kinds of questions. Let me try to jump to a few of these. Sorry, folks. Lauren wants to know, Lauren Middleton, of course. She's been to the museum twice, and she saw a weird, furry, and shiny lobster. Is there a story behind it? She couldn't find it.
Wow. A weird, furry, shiny lobster. That's one. I know there's some weird lobsters in there. I don't. Oh, maybe she's talking about seeing that elsewhere, or maybe there's an animal that was discovered called the Yeti lobster. It was found in the ocean, and they tried to make it a little sexier by calling it a Yeti lobster, but it's just a new animal that was found in the ocean, and it has these white kind of tentacles and different things coming out, so it looks a little weird.
Got it. Dan wants to know, he said, heard you've acquired many items in your museum from other cryptozoologist collections. What are some of the highlights you've added in the last few years?
Wow. Unfortunately, some people have died, and when they die, they leave their collection to us. One of the most famous was Tom Page. Tom Page was an individual that sponsored many Bigfoot expeditions, and we acquired his entire collection. He gave most of it to us before he died, including signed letters from Patterson and Peter Byrne and people like that, but also the rifle that Patterson and Byrne had used to hunt Bigfoot in 1969 through 1972. It was a dart gun, and so that's at the museum. But some things are like Yeti hair I got from Dr. Aguino. Different people who have cancer or know they're going to pass away leave their whole collections. So people have to come and look, but a lot of it's on our website. But some of it is gigantic, like large examples.
Sure. I mean, your website offers some peek into the museum, of course. I mean, I imagine you're seeing an uptick in traffic because that's all we can do right now.
Yeah. We've uploaded a tour from 2015.
Okay.
Whenever I went around before we moved to Thompson's Point to give people a kind of a hint of what's there. But all they have to do really is type International Cryptozoology Museum in Google Images, and there's thousands of pictures that people have taken of inside the museum.
That's great. I think it's awesome that I don't mean to say at your age, like, sorry, I don't mean I don't mean to lay that on you, but you know what I mean? Like, I could see at some point being like, yeah, I mean, you don't have the energy or the ability to go into the mountains for weeks at a time and not shower or whatever, but like you can start acquiring this stuff and have this legacy inside a building besides just your writing. But like that's awesome. Like this legacy of a place that people are talking about that's getting bigger all the time. It's got to be satisfying, I think, to walk in and see that. I mean, what do you feel like when you walk into your own museum each day?
Oh, it's absolutely great. I mean, I started actually 60 years ago on March 20th, 1960.
Okay.
And so that's pretty amazing to me if I think about, I started then and I started collecting almost immediately. One of the first things that I collected is the flag from Sir Edmund Hillary's Yeti expedition.
Okay.
So that's up in the museum. I never stopped collecting. And so my house became full of all this stuff and, 10,000 items, move it to the museum. And I mean, I'm still living in a museum, but
right.
It's a legacy. I was in the field. I went on expeditions. I've been to every state in the United States but Alaska. And I would go there and I'd find tourist art. I'd find artifacts, foot casts, hair samples. And so I was in the field. And then there's the part where you become a professor and you write books. And then I had a kind of one of these cathartic events happen early as the century changed. And I said, am I going to be remembered as the ultimate cryptozoological hoarder or a museum director? So I decided to go for the
That's a razor thin line, right? Right. That's
absolutely.
oh, I love it. Hey, so Bruce Wells wants to know last Mothman sighting. Have you heard?
Well, there's this whole business about all the Chicago sightings.
Right by the airport, right?
Right by the airport, all over, down by the speakeasies downtown, by where people are killing each other, all of that. One of the problems I have with the Chicago sightings is that the city is full of security cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's over 70 sightings of Mothman and the police get involved, why aren't there any good video of that Mothman?
Sure.
Why does it turn out to be a kite or a balloon or a hallucination or somebody that's intoxicated? So those sightings, I wrote about it in my book, Evil Incarnate,
Mm-hmm.
A whole chapter on the Mothman of Chicago, but I'm very dubious about some of those. So those are the sightings, though, that everybody's looking at and talking about online. In the West Virginia, in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, we have a lot of people there that feel that Mothman never left, that he's still seen. After the bridge collapsed, everybody said, well, Mothman's gone, but he wasn't gone. I got reports from people there down through the years, and I think it's still happening.
One interesting thing that I saw someone do in Chicago was they went to the same parking lot where one of the videos was taken, and they just sat there and they caught a plane with like their phone, and the plane's far away, right? I mean, far enough away that it's pixelating and looks sort of vague. And they said, boy, that looks a lot like the alleged Mothman video. And I know that's a jet. That's a commercial jet that's flying on the runway. I forget if it was going to O'Hare or Midway. And one of the things I've heard you talk about for years is, like big cat sightings, right? A photograph is distorted. Like any photograph you've ever seen of anything is distorted because the world is three-dimensional. Like doesn't my finger look big? It's huge right now, right? Look at how big that finger is.
Horse perspective, right?
Right? Like now it's too small. It's too small to be a finger, right? Because your camera is three-dimensional. And so a cat real close to the camera can be huge. And so you need to go to the same spot. Like you said, you showed a big cat and they said, look, this is right by a fence. You can go stand in the same spot, take the photo and see how big it would have to be. And the problem is when we get some sensational photograph or video, nobody does that. It's no fun, right? They just go, look, big cat or Mothman or whatever. And no one says, well, let me at least take a photo in the same spot and see what that looks like.
Right. Like some of the videos of Bigfoot running down the road. You go to that area, you look at the tree behind it, and you find out, that was a 5'4" jogger going along.
Right. Right. And it's just one of those things that that's part of the research. Tammy,
you reminded me about the little airplane in the sky. You remember Betty Hill?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, after her sighting and her involvement in it, she was one of the biggest promoters of UFOs overhead all the time. And other researchers would go with her and look at these. All of them were airplanes that she would, fantasize as UFOs all over her area. And so people do have wishful, thinking.
Well, of course, and I get it too. I mean, I've been on more the ghost side than you have, and I've been on these big group events, and people want to see something so badly that sometimes you're there and they go, look right there, and you're right next to them, and I go, I don't see what you're saying. I mean, maybe it wasn't for me, but I know you want this badly. Okay, one more quick question about Mothman, and then we'll move on. But Charlie wants to know: do you think he's associated with disasters? Or is that a coincidence? Was the bridge collapse in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, an event that was going to happen no matter what? Or, do you think there really is a connection to Mothman?
Well, I think two things are going on here. That's an area that has a lot of Celtic people. And you have a real association between Banshee legends and disasters.
Yeah.
So was there something about Mothman as a banshee?
The harbinger, yeah.
Because the main reporter there, she actually had dreams of Christmas packages floating in the river. And the actual collapse of the bridge occurred on December 15th. And it seemed to be associated with 13 months of sightings of the Mothman leading up to the exact date that when the bridge collapsed. And then, believe it or not, from that date, 13 months later, that woman reporter died very early, before or something. I think however, that's one thing, but the other thing is that my friend Mark Hall, the late Mark Hall, did a lot of in-depth research in that area on indigenous people legends and sightings, and found that over 100 years of Indian sightings of these large winged creatures were happening right in the Point Pleasant area. So you had Mothmen before then that weren't called Mothmen.
Thunderbirds, right? Like, yeah.
Right. John Keel, John Keel wrote a book that in essence was cryptozoology's In True Blood. It was a novel, but not a novel. It was a real nonfiction book about real incidents that read like a novel. And it made Mothman famous. So famous that it became a movie with Richard Gere.
That's right. Yeah, the Richard Gere movie. Yeah. I know as humans, right? We always want to make order out of chaos. That's how conspiracy theories are born, right? Like, there's some grand design behind this seemingly horrible act of violence or natural disaster or whatever. Like if we feel like someone's in charge, we feel a little bit better, even if that person's evil.
Well, we like to find patterns. We like to have explanations. Doesn't mean it's still not mysterious. We're still the unknown.
Of course.
But it also doesn't necessarily mean that my, second uncle on the mother's side was responsible for the Kennedy assassination.
Right. Because it was my second cousin's uncle's former brother's roommate.
I knew that.
Right. Okay, Tammy has a question. I don't know about this one. I hope maybe you do. Loren, what's your take on the Dyatlov Pass incident?
Yes, that's the Russians, mostly 20-somethings who get lost and disappear. The Russian government investigated, the military came in there. I was involved in a documentary that was on TV, and they were going to talk about some other stuff. And then I was cut out of the documentary, but they still paid me. And I got to fly to Utah. So
good enough.
Yeah. But anyway, what we know is that this was probably, they died of nothing more than exposure, and then wild animals tore up their bodies. It wasn't Bigfoot, it wasn't Yeti, it wasn't wild men. That is part of the legend that has grown up around this story, but I don't see any of that having any reality.
Okay, wild man stories. I love these. So I did a New England Legends podcast on the Winstead wild man in Connecticut, which, you know, well documented. And traditionally, and please correct me if I'm wrong, a wild man is someone that just was like, screw it, I'm living in the woods, right? A human, a regular man that just had enough, right? And
mostly hermits or feral humans, yes. But newspaper people in the 20s and before would use the label wild man to talk about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, hermits, derelicts, troubled homeless people, except they didn't use the word homeless then. So it really was a catch-all for all of those.
Yeah. Okay. I got it. Okay. So there's so many more questions, but Loren, we got to take a quick break because guess what? We had an anonymous donor send me a bunch of these Amazon gift cards, $25 each, and I've been giving them away, one every episode. Sorry, you can't win, but you know, what are you going to do?
Can my doggy use it for dog food?
You could use it for whatever Amazon sells. So use it for something you need or something you want. And you got to get this trivia question correct. And this week is hard. This is our last one. So thank you so much to the anonymous donor who sent in 6 of these. I've already mailed out 5 to the winners. This is the very last one. How you win is after you hear the question from the paranormal detective, you just type your answer in the comments, and the first person to get it right, I'll contact you after the show, and you win. Ready? Let's do this. Here it comes. Take it away, Greg Lawson.
Thanks, Jeff. Hey, everybody. This week's trivia question from the Paranormal Detective Trivia Game. We're going to go with a legend card this time. This house is located where Herman Stricker was brutally murdered with an axe by his wife. It is said that she dragged him down the stairs, which explains the stains still left there. Name this location. I don't think you can.
There it is. He's laid down the gauntlet. Good luck, everybody.
It was
no.
I know.
So Catherine's listening in Maine, where we have Sasquatch. I mean, are there any states that don't have Sasquatch while people get on Google?
Reportedly, for a long time, people said Hawaii and Connecticut. No, Rhode Island. But then along came a show called Finding Bigfoot, and all of a sudden there was Bigfoot in every state.
Right. Well, there was, because that channel was available in every state.
Right.
That's good. Yeah, no, it's one of those things where also I love the label, right? Bigfoot to me is not as interesting as like the monster of Coca-Cola Ledge, which by all accounts is a Bigfoot, right? But I like when he gets a local name, when something is that local that you know, someone didn't even think to label it Bigfoot. They labeled it something else.
Yes. I like a lot of those local little names, like the creature of Cobalt Ledge up in Ontario, where it actually has aged over the years, and you can actually see it growing old in some of the reports. So those are cool.
All right, we do have a winner here. Okay. So this is how it works. This is like behind the scenes stuff, but whatever. I mean, you know, we're making it work. The way this software works is you got to give it a minute, because questions sometimes when they come in, when the comments come in quickly, they can pop in out of order. So I got to make sure that it's the correct order. And looks like Jennifer, congratulations. The Stricker Ranch in Idaho, also known as Rock Creek Station, but you were the first. So congratulations. I'll contact you after and mail you $25 to Amazon. I'm not sure if it's good for booze. I don't know if you can buy booze on Amazon, but you can try. Congratulations.
That Jennifer wasn't my wife, in case anybody's worried.
No, I wasn't worried. The fix isn't in. So Mike, there's so much. So the funny thing about paranormal conferences, when Loren and I go to these, and we're at the same one, we're both early risers.
Yeah, we are.
We are. And like, it's not unusual to go into the restaurant and it's completely empty except Loren Coleman and me. And I thought it'd be awkward to sit across the way. We join each other.
Right.
Yeah, that's our thing.
Those casino buffets where you're in charge of your own seating, your own mealing, all of that.
I know. And Loren usually upgrades my tea because I don't drink coffee. And so he'll they bring me hot water and he'll be like, look, he'll reach into his like secret pouch and be like, I got the good stuff. And he'll
bring my own.
Yeah, always appreciated.
The other early riser that's been very beneficial to me is Bob Humlin.
Okay.
I go to Bigfoot conferences and I go down to the Holiday Inn and he's the only one there and I'm there. And I sat for an hour once and asked him all of the hard questions about, come on, did you make this?
What did he say?
He said, no, it really happened. He said, look, I had to ask my wife to come here when I started coming. And I couldn't have done it if I wasn't willing to tell the truth. And so that's on. So no, he absolutely was very sincere. He would talk about how upset he was with some of the media people that would ask him that question, and he'd bow his head, and say, no. And they would misinterpret that and say, do their editing and show him going like this, like he was saying yes. So it was terrible to hear him. He's lived a pretty awful life with regard to the media.
I'm sure, because the problem is, everybody seems to, have some sort of angle on it. Loren, people are noticing that there's a beast behind you. And
there, yes.
There it is. The Bigfoot's obvious. What the heck's that other thing?
That's an orang pendek. It's an actual life-sized orang pendek, which are the little creatures seen in Indonesia and Sumatra, like a Bigfoot, but actually much different. They have a foot that's more like your hand.
Adorable.
Your big. I got all screwed up with this.
Your overly huge hand. My incredibly large hand.
That goes out to the edge. I thought you meant my dogs behind me. There's 3 dogs here, and they take turns going in this little chair.
Yeah, your dogs are adorable.
It's not a Bigfoot. They're not Bigfoot here.
Nah. Someone did ask about the Beast of Bray Road. Do you know that one?
Oh, yeah, the dog man.
The dog man, yeah. It was Judy wanted to know. Well, any thoughts? The upright canines interest you, or not as much?
I'm very critical thinking about this too. Mm-hmm. People that see them, they're very credible. Farmers, local people, police officers, sheriffs. But the other thing about them is that lots of the early reports that I investigated, people would talk about these canid-like creatures, huge man-sized creatures, bending over and eating roadkill. And I thought, what if this is nothing more than misidentification of Bigfoot eating roadkill, or bear, or lots of other things like wolves, or your neighborhood giant collie. So there seems to be some specific, it's southern Wisconsin, southern Michigan, a real notion that there's something going on there. And as you and I have gone to a lot of those conferences in that very area, I hear a lot from native people, from local residents about dogman reports. And indeed, there seems to be some connection to that area, and also Algonquin Indians. It's Algonquin Indian, a lot of Indian mound sightings where people were seeing these big dog-like creatures near the indigenous people's old mounds from 2,000 years ago. So it's a spooky area.
I get it. And I know, of course, Linda Godfrey, and I've heard her speak about it. She's done a lot of work on that. And I love when they get local, right? When it seems to be more regionalized. And nothing is more local or regionalized than our next guest, a creature you personally put on the map. There he is, the Dover Demon.
The Dover Demon, yes.
The Dover Demon. Now that's Dover, Massachusetts. And what I really dig about this story, and please again, correct me if I'm wrong, I have not heard of a sighting of this creature in any other town on planet Earth except Dover. Is that correct?
That is correct. Dover had 4 sightings, 4 eyewitnesses and 3 sightings from April 21st to April 22nd in 1977. And I got there first. I saw there was a Dover country store, and behind the desk, one of the eyewitnesses had done a drawing and was pinned up there. And I asked the woman, Melody Fryer, how can I remember her name? That's amazing. Yeah. I hope she's doing well. Anyway, I asked her about the eyewitness. His name was Bill Bartlett.
Bill Bartlett, yeah.
And I looked him up, interviewed him, found the other people, and then got some other people that were UFO people involved, because there weren't that many cryptozoologists around, and I wanted some high energy interviewers.
Mm-hmm.
We redid and interviewed concentric circles of police officers, teachers, parents, and just got a wider and wider, and couldn't find any other eyewitnesses, but we did find that those 4 witnesses were very credible. Since that time, of course, done a lot of research about the Dover Demon.
Mm-hmm.
Noticed that there's lots of things around the world that might be Dover demons.
Yeah, and just because people are asking, you use the word demon not because you thought it came from hell or anything like that. It was just Dover, right? If it was,
I love alliteration.
Of course, right? I mean, if it was like
Panther,
yeah,
Dover Demon,
right?
A lot of things that I've created. See, what I do when I investigate, I create a file.
Yeah.
And I put all of my information in it, and I label that file so I can re-find it. And Dover Demon made sense. It's a name I would use. I used in my presentations with the media, whatever, and it caught on. But
so
not the devil.
No, right. But so Dover Demon, Bill Bartlett, I actually interviewed him, 12, 14 years ago for my Weird Massachusetts book. And what's really, I don't have the drawing, unfortunately, but it looks pretty much like your little clay model there. Bill Bartlett today makes what's that?
That's a 5 foot tall life-size model in the museum.
Forgive me, perspective, Loren. I can't tell. Tell from the photo.
Put it closer to the
camera. So Bill Bartlett today, and you can look him up. He's a fine arts painter, an amazing one. Like go Google him. And I mean, his work is realistic and amazing. And like most artists, he was an artistic kid, which means he understands perspective and distance and all that stuff. So when he drew what he saw, I mean, that's the next best thing to a camera in my mind.
He has a photographic memory, actually.
Does he? Okay.
And all of his art is of the realistic school. He doesn't change it. He's what he sees and draws it.
Yeah. And you can see his paintings. I mean, like they're portraits of people and they look like photographs. They're incredible.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Marvin, thanks for he's the peanut gallery on these things. All right. Catherine, because a lot of people have asked Pukwudgies.
Yes. Those be a form of the Dover Demon. These are little impolite creatures. They can be very dangerous, as you know from investigating the Bridgewater Triangle. One of the main aspects of their behavior is they like to get people near ledges and push them over.
Right.
And you know Tim Bunnell, don't you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Bunnell of America.
There's a beer called Pukwudgie beer.
I've had it.
Yeah. Well, he brought me a full can, and he came to the second story of the museum, which is a mezzanine, actually. And he was showing it to me, and it went over the side and crashed to the bottom of the floor and went all different directions and it looked like this crumpled mess. And I was thinking, this is so appropriate for a Pukwudgie. to have done this, to have
Right.
take his beer and throw it over the edge.
So I get excited. I don't know how you feel about this. When I see like Pukwudgie makes it to a beer can label, I'm thrilled. I'm like, this, man, you're going mainstream at that point, right? This isn't just something from like some old dusty book. Like, this is something that makes us, and I get people contact me and say, I was in the woods, I saw this weird thing, I think it was a Pukwudgie. And I go, oh, well, why? And they're like, well, what did it look like? I don't know. It didn't really have a shape. It just, this weird thing rustled in the bushes and then it was gone. And I'm like, and you just Pukwudgie, right? That's where you went to. What were you drinking, the Pukwudgie beer, right? Like, was that, now you've got this visual, on the can. It's
Right.
it's
At our museum, we have a whole display case of what I call cryptozoology.
nice.
It's all the beers, all the wines, all of the whiskeys that have Loch Ness monsters, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, ale, Pukwudgie, because it's been an explosion across the country. People on IPAs putting the cryptids.
Yeah, and I love that, because I think it gets us talking about this stuff, and that's how all of it was born, right? We talked about it, we shared the stories, we said, hey, this sounds weird, it sounds like something that's not quite believable, but I don't know, it's believable enough that there might be something to it.
It's
And
part of our culture.
One of the examples I've used in the past too is when you're talking about Mothman. I mean, the U.S. military believes in Thunderbirds, right? The U.S. Air Force, that's their jets. Their answer to the Blue Angels of the Navy. Like, that's the Thunderbird, and a man-like bird whose wings flap and creates thunder sounds. It's so big, and that's been around. It's in all kinds of cultures around America, probably around the world, I imagine. I mean, we can't be the only one with Thunderbirds, right?
What was one of your lectures where you talked about in a boardroom, if you put a statue up in the corner, everybody will know that's a Bigfoot? So
this is where that was born. I was in the History Channel headquarters in New York City. We were pitching a show, which went nowhere, obviously. And he had the executive I was talking to had one of those like 4-foot, Bigfoot statues right in the corner of his office. And he said, well, we're never going to prove Bigfoot's real. He's like, unless you disagree with me on that. And I said, I think we could prove he's real in under 10 seconds without leaving your office right now. And he said, how would you do that? I'm like, you just have to call someone in, someone who hasn't been in the room with us. Anyone, secretary, CEO, I don't care. Just get someone in. So he went in the hall, brought someone in, and I said, ready? 10 seconds. You're going to start the timer. And they're like, he's like, okay, I'm ready. And I just looked at the person and I said, I'm sorry, just a quick question. What's that? And I pointed to the statue and they said, Bigfoot. And I went, we're done.
Right. You can have a group of 4th graders, 5th graders, ask them all to draw Bigfoot, and they will. They know what
look the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And be that way with Mothman too.
Yeah. And and then he's selling beef jerky.
Right? Exactly.
That's what's next. And once they go pop culture, I mean, that is, in fact, I mean, how do you even define reality at this point? Like
the Progressive commercials, he's renamed himself as Dwayne or something, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. That's right. Or it was one of the insurance companies. And when you get to that point where, I don't know, it mixes with pop culture, it mixes with legend and lore, and we all know it, and yet people scoff at it. And I don't know, how does something stick around that long without there being something to it?
Exactly. And that's the thing I wanted to say about your question with regard to, is Bigfoot exist in every state? It's not so much that I think a real Bigfoot exists in every state, but a cultural Bigfoot does. It's nationwide now.
Do you think we'll ever, I mean, okay, remember, I forget, it was a few years ago, the Bigfoot in the freezer?
Oh yeah.
I was so excited for like almost 20 entire seconds.
Right.
Like, I was like, wow, finally. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Why would you have this like one fuzzy photo? And then it all fell apart.
Yeah, but the hoaxsters actually sold it to a contractor for $20,000 and he never got his money back. So,
well,
yeah.
Buyer beware, right?
Fool beware, right?
Oh, Andrea wants to know, in Ontario, Northern Ontario, Bigfoot sightings? I mean, Canada's got its own Sasquatch versions, right?
Oh, right. It does. I had an interesting thing happen at the museum a few years ago. I had these 3 individuals come in, and I used to do this thing where I would guess what people's occupation were. The ones that I would always guess correctly, police officers. Because usually ex-military, they say sir a lot, their haircuts are close. Well, these 3 gentlemen came in, and I thought they were law enforcement, but not quite police. Turned out they were border guards. And they said, we don't believe in Bigfoot, but let us tell you this story.
Right.
And they had a story that they were on their ATVs.
Yep.
And they were going on patrol, and then all of a sudden they heard this racket coming through the woods. And they said it wasn't a moose. They know the sound of moose. It wasn't a human. It wasn't a bear. But they said it sounded like it was 10 feet tall, and it was coming towards them. And it was almost up to them. They said they all jumped off their vehicles, drew their guns, and was waiting for it. And it turned 90 degrees and went that way. And they said, we don't believe in Bigfoot, but there was something out there. And that's kind of the stories I get from Canada. It's so wooded. Lots of people don't see them. Some people do, but there's lots of those kind of interactions.
Those are my favorite personal stories that people share with me. There's no such thing as Bigfoot, but I was damn ready to shoot it.
Right.
Right. No such thing as the thing I was aiming my gun at. Right. Ready to unload a lethal bullet into whatever that creature was.
Right. Or the people that say, I had this thing in my sights, but I couldn't shoot it because it looked too human.
Well, that's a good move, person with the gun.
Yes.
Right? Like, isn't that the first rule of guns? Like, if you don't know what you're shooting at, don't shoot.
Right. A lot of people also say they think that Bigfoot is an endangered species, and they don't want to get in trouble with the government. Of course, it has to be an animal that's been verified before it can be endangered. But I'm glad they're not shooting up the woods.
If you're not 100% sure at what you're aiming at, don't shoot it. That should just be a rule. If you're hunting deer, know you're shooting a deer.
We have the unfortunate, very famous case in Maine of a woman wearing white gloves as she was hanging her clothes up, and somebody mistook her for a deer.
White-tailed deer, yeah.
Yeah, and shot her dead. So that hunter was not very aware of what they were doing. But that's an exception, I hope.
Of course. I was working on a project, Loren, maybe like 4 years ago, where I put on a Sasquatch costume because we were filming a reenactment. We weren't trying to pass it off as real. It was just way in the distance. I was walking in the woods in this costume, and it, and it would be like a reenactment. And as I put the costume on, I'm like, oh my God, this is how I'm going to die. Right. I'll be in the woods, and some hunter's going to be like, holy cow, it's real. I'm going to be rich. Let me just, shoot it and get it stuffed. And I'm calling Loren Coleman right after this. This is going to be great.
Well, there is the reality that Chewbacca, when he did some of those scenes in the forest, he had to have guards around him with bright orange on because they were afraid somebody was going to shoot him.
I don't doubt it, right? That's the world we live in. Someone, it would be a pretty epic obituary. Jeff Belanger, paranormal author and researcher, died dressed as Sasquatch.
And I would write it.
Oh my God, would you?
Yes.
I would be so honored. Talk about becoming part of the story. Dang it. Okay, we only have a couple minutes left. God, this went fast.
Only an hour? That's what we're doing the 4-hour one.
You daring me? How did you get into mermaids and stuff?
Mermaids. Well, you can see Mark Hall before he died. He passed on this book. Mermaids may just be another cryptid. It seems to be something with a little more substantial. It's not just a legend, not a myth. And there certainly is a long, long history in and out of our culture back to the Greeks.
Sure.
So I wanted to put a book out there. It's a very popular topic with people interested in cryptozoology.
I mean, but is it truly like half human, half fish? Like, is that really the thought, or is it just something misidentified?
It's probably for instance, there's lots of reports off of Russia, and it may be some kind of seal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we certainly know in the Caribbean they're seen, and they're the manatee,
Yep.
Dogon, things like that. So there seems to be something a little bit there. That's a book that's coming out from the museum this year. We're going to publish it with the International Cryptozoology Museum imprint on it, and start our own imprint.
Right. And there's the
Gillman.
The Gillman. And if while you're there, you can always get a t-shirt.
Right. Our new Mothman t-shirt, it's selling like hotcakes.
Yes. If only I knew where to go to get those. Oh, look, cryptozoologymuseum.com. There it is.
Oh, yeah.
Epic. God, I love it. Okay, one more story, because you sent this to me. This was the very last image you sent. And Memorial Day, I think it is fitting. This is a Vietnam story, right?
Yes. There's a lot going on the internet right now, because the History Channel just did a segment on rock apes. During the Vietnam War, many of the soldiers south of Da Nang in the highlands were attacked by these things that they would call rock apes, because the humans would be on patrol, and these big upright apes would actually throw rocks at them. So I felt it kind of interesting that the timing for Memorial Day and all over the trending on Twitter and everything was all about rock apes.
And there they are.
There they are. And that's from Patrick Weech in my book, The Field Guide to Bigfoot. And those are drawings from that. That's another one of my books, Bigfoot.
My gosh. He's everywhere.
He's everywhere.
I love it. So how are you getting on right now? I mean, being locked in, and how are you keeping your sanity right now?
You know, it's fine. I go to the museum a little bit. We have a backyard that I have to take the dogs out. I want to take the dogs out. It's beautiful weather now.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. But it's very frustrating to know that there's a museum there. And certainly in New England, these are the months where make or break us. And
yeah.
So I have, a lot of sympathy for all the fried dough places that aren't able to be open. It's a time that we'll lose. But it's a very strange time. I mean, this is a year to remember. It feels like we get to experience the Spanish flu time, and
yeah,
100 years.
I mean, I'm trying to reconcile it with my daughter. Of course, is in school. Like, that's done. Like, she's learning from home now, and she's been good about it. And it's just it's one of these things where I'm like, wow, kid, you don't know this, but you're going to be like 40, 50 years old one day and talking about this year. Like, I remember the pandemic that shut the world down.
Right.
And we're going to be recovering from this. So my daughter's 13, and it occurred to me, by the time she's done probably college and entering the workforce, the economy should be fully recovered, which is good, right? Like, my heart, maybe, I hope, but I mean, my heart breaks for people that are, graduating soon and entering the workforce. And, God, I mean, that's a tough start.
And we lost Tom Brady too.
No, if one more thing happens, I swear this is it, right? Like, Tom Brady goes to Florida, and
no Red Sox until July. I mean, what kind of world do we live in?
I have no idea. And there's not a playbook for this. And this is what's giving rise to the conspiracy theories too, right? I mean, you've got, because people are angry and they're desperate for answers. And the true answer is, from the highest level, we don't really know for sure. And so we're trying to be safe. And then people turn that into oh, you're just trying to take down this political party or that political party, or you're trying to control us, or you're trying to take whatever. And man, I get it. We're desperate. We're cornered, but I don't know. I mean, we also have to get through this, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know.
So you stay safe.
You stay safe too, and don't tell me what to do. This is America. I'm free. I'm free to be as not safe as I want.
Oh, okay. You do that.
As Charles Darwin said, it's fine if you don't quarantine.
There's Fergus.
There he is. Loren, thank you so much. It was fun visiting with you. Thanks for hanging out with us. And you had a ton of questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to them all, but you folks can also go check out the Cryptozoology Museum. That's Loren. You can follow him on Twitter. He's all over social media. You can find him wherever you find your social media. And of course, if you want to tip your bartender tonight, you can. There it is. Venmo tips are accepted. That's what it's come to, Loren.
Okay. You get it where you can get it.
You get it where you can get it. So thank you to everyone who's tipped so far. And thanks for being part of this. Please keep sharing.
Friends and fans.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get back out there. Things will get to normal. Things will be good. Happy Memorial Day. Thank you to all who served. And until next time, please do take it easy.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Loren.